Good day, readers. We are continuing on today with the next group of chapters in The One and Only Ivan. Last class period, you took your quiz on chapters 1 through 41. Go back, take a look at how you did, right? See if there's any troublesome areas as we move on to the next group of chapters. So today, we're starting on page 90. If you want to follow along with me, I'm going to read a section of the chapter, or chapters. Page 90, Elephant Jokes. Ivan? Bob? I blink. The dawn sky is a smudge of gray, flecked with pink, like a picture drawn with two crayons. I can just make out Ruby in the shadows, waving hello with her trunk. Are you awake? Ruby asks. We are now, says Bob. And Stella's still asleep, and I don't want to wake her because she said her foot was hurting, but I'm really... Ruby pauses for a breath. Really bored. Bob opens one eye. You know what I do when I'm bored? What? Ruby asks eagerly. Bob closes his eye. I sleep. It's a little early, Ruby, I say. I'm used to getting up early. Ruby wraps her trunk around one of the bars on her door. At my old circus, we always got up when it was still dark, and then we had breakfast and we walked in a circle. And then they chained my feet up, and that really hurt. Ruby falls silent. Instantly, Bob is snoring. Ivan, Ruby asks, do you know any jokes? I especially like jokes about elephants. Well, let me see. I heard Mac tell one once. I yawn. How can you tell that an elephant has been in the refrigerator? How? By the footprints in the butter. Ba-dum-bum. Ruby doesn't react. I sit up on my elbows, trying not to disturb Bob. Get it? What's a refrigerator? Ruby asks. It's a human thing. A cold box with a door. They put food inside. They put food in the door? Or food in the box? And is it a big box? Ruby asks. Or a little box? I can see this is going to take a while, so I sit up all the way. Bob slides off, grumbling. I reach for my pencil, the one I snapped in half with my teeth. Here, I say. I'll draw you a picture of one. In the dim light, it takes me a minute to find a piece of the paper Julia gave me. The page is a little damp and has a smear of something orange on it. I think it's from a tangerine. I try my best to make a refrigerator. The broken pencil is not cooperating, but I do what I can. By the time I'm done, the first streaks of morning sun have appeared in flashy cartoon colors. I hold up my picture for Ruby to see. She studies it intently, her head turned so that one black eye is trained on my drawing. Wow, you made that? Is this the thing you were telling me about before? Art? Sure is. I can draw all kinds of things. I'm especially good at fruit. Could you draw a banana right now? Ruby asks. Absolutely. I turn the paper over and sketch. Wow, Ruby says again in an odd voice. Not an odd voice, an odd voice. Like she's in awe. She's like, wow. And when I hold up the page, it looks good enough to eat. She makes a happy, lilting sound, an elephant laugh. It's like the song of a bird I recall from long ago, a tiny yellow bird with a voice like dancing water. Ooh, did you hear the simile, scholars? Right? The voice is like dancing water, right? The voice isn't actually water, right? But think about water that's splashing around and playful, right? The voice is like that. Strange. I'd forgotten all about that bird. How she'd wake me every morning at dawn when I was still curled safely in my mother's nest. It's a good feeling making Ruby laugh, so I draw another picture, and another, along the edges of the paper. An orange, a candy bar, a carrot. So, scholars, I'm near the top of page 95. What are you two up to? Stella asks, moaning as she tries to move her sore foot. How are you this morning? I ask. Just feeling my age, Stella says. I'm fine. Ivan is making me pictures, Ruby says. And he told me a joke. I really like Ivan, Aunt Stella. Stella winks at me. Me too, she says. Ivan, want to hear my favorite joke? Ruby asks. I heard it from Maggie. She was one of the giraffes in my old circus. Sure, I say. It goes like this. Ruby clears her throat. What do elephants have that nothing else has? Trunks, I think. But I don't answer because I don't want to ruin Ruby's fun. I don't know, Ruby, I reply. What do elephants have that nothing else has? Baby elephants, Ruby says. A good one, Ruby, I say, watching Stella stroke Ruby's back with her trunk. Good one, Stella says softly. Page 97. Children. Once I asked Stella if she'd ever had any babies. She shook her head. I never had the opportunity. You would have made a great mother, I told her. Thank you, Ivan, Stella said, clearly pleased. I like to think so. Having young ones is a big responsibility. You have to teach them how to take mud baths, of course, and emphasize the importance of fiber in their diet. She looked away, contemplating. So when you're contemplating, right, you're thinking, you're pondering. Elephants are excellent at contemplating. I think the hardest part of being a parent, Stella added after a while, would be keeping your babies safe from harm, protecting them. The way silverbacks do in the jungle, I said. Exactly, Stella nodded. You would have been good at protecting, too, I said confidently. I'm not so sure, Stella said, gazing at the iron bars surrounding her. I'm not sure at all. Right, so she's thinking right now about how she wasn't able to protect herself and keep herself from getting put in the circus and now in this cage. So maybe she wouldn't have been able to protect a baby. The parking lot. Mac and George are chatting while George cleans one of my windows. George, Mac says, frowning, there's something wrong with the parking lot. George sighs. I'll take a look as soon as I'm done with this window. What's the problem? There are cars in it. That's what's wrong. Cars, George. Mac breaks into a grin. I think things are actually starting to pick up a bit. It's gotta be the billboard. People say that baby elephant, people see that baby elephant, and they just have to stop and spend their hard earned cash. I hope so, George says. We sure could use the business. Mac's right. I have noticed more visitors coming since he and George added the picture of Ruby to the sign. People crowd around Ruby and Stella's domain, oohing and awing at the sight of such a tiny elephant. I gaze out at the huge sign that makes humans stop and spend their hard-earned cash. I have to admit that the picture of Ruby is rather cute, even if she doesn't look like a real elephant. I wonder if Mac could add a little red hat and a curly tail to the picture of me. Maybe then more visitors would stop by my domain. I could use some oohs and ahs myself. So we've now learned business has picked up, right, scholars? So more people are spending their money and coming to see the baby elephant. Ruby's story, page 101. Ivan, tell me another joke, please, Ruby begs, after the 2 o'clock show. I think I may have run out of jokes, I admit. A story, then, Ruby says. Aunt Stella's sleeping, and there's nothing to do. I tap my chin. I'm trying hard to think. But when I gaze up at the food court skylight, I'm mesmerized by the elephant-colored clouds galloping past. So, scholars, let's stop there for a moment. So, mesmerized is one of our vocabulary words, right? It means you're enthralled by something, you're wowed by it, right? Like it's captured your attention. So, he's mesmerized by the clouds that are galloping past. So, scholars, there we have some personification, right? Clouds can't actually gallop, right? But can you picture what that would mean if the clouds are galloping past, right? Think of a horse galloping by, right? So the clouds are moving by pretty fast, really quickly. Ruby taps her foot impatiently. I know. I'll tell you a story, she says. A real live true one. Good idea, I say. What's it about? It's about me. Ruby lowers her voice. It's about me and how I fell into a hole. A big hole. Humans dug it. Bob pricks his ears and joins me by the window. I always enjoy a good digging story, he says. It was a big hole full of water near a village, Ruby says. I don't know why humans made it. Sometimes you just need to dig for the sake of digging, Bob reflects. I think about that. Does that sound like a dog kind of thing, right? Sometimes you just need to dig to dig. We were looking for food, Ruby says, my family and I. But I wandered off and got lost and went too close to the village. Ruby looks at me, eyes wide. I was so scared when I fell into that hole. Of course you were, I say. I would have been scared too. Me too, Bob admits. And I like holes. The hole was huge. Ruby pokes her trunk between the bars and makes a circle in the air. And guess what? She doesn't wait for an answer. The water was all the way up to my neck, and I was sure I was going to die. I shudder. What happened then? I ask. I'll tell you what happened, Bob says darkly. They captured her and put her in a box and shipped her off, and here she is, just like they did with Stella. He pauses to scratch an ear. Humans. Rats have bigger hearts. Roaches have kinder souls. Flies have... So what he's saying is, right? So he's saying that's how they captured her, right? She fell in this hole. Then the humans captured her and brought her to the circus, and then eventually here to Big Top Mall. And he's saying humans don't have very nice hearts. No, Bob, Ruby interrupts. You're wrong. These humans helped me. When they saw I was trapped, they grabbed ropes and they made loops around my neck and my tummy. The whole entire village helped. Even little kids and grandmas and grandpas. And they all pulled and pulled and... Ruby stops. Her lashes are wet, and I know she must be remembering all the terrible feelings from that day. And they saved me, she finishes in a whisper. Bob blinks. They saved you? He repeats. When I was finally out, everyone cheered, Ruby says. Top of 104 scholars. And the children fed me fruit, and then all those humans led me back to my family. It took the whole day to find them. No way, Bob says, still doubtful. It's true, Ruby says. Every word. Of course it's true, I say. I've heard rescue stories like that before. It's Stella's voice. She sounds weary. Slowly, she makes her way over to Ruby. Humans can surprise you sometimes. An unpredictable species, Homo sapiens. So, Homo sapiens are humans. So she's saying sometimes they can surprise you and do something good. They're very unpredictable, right? Meaning you don't know what they're going to do. Bob still looks unconvinced. But Ruby's here now, he points out. If humans are so swell, who did that to her? I send Bob a grumpy look. Sometimes he doesn't know when to be quiet. To keep quiet. Ruby swallows, and I'm afraid she's going to cry. But when she speaks, her voice is strong. Bad humans killed my family, and bad humans sent me here. But that day in the hole, it was humans who saved me. Ruby leans her head on Stella's shoulder. Those humans were good. It doesn't make any sense, Bob says. I just don't understand them. I never will. You're not alone, I say, and I turn my gaze back to the racing gray clouds. 106. A hit. Stella's foot hurts too much for her to do any hard tricks for the 2 o'clock show. Instead, Mac pulls her, limping, into the ring, where she tracks a circle in the sawdust. Ruby clings to her like a shadow. Ooh, did you hear another simile? It has the word like. Right? Ruby clings to her like a shadow. Right? Ruby's not actually a shadow. It's just telling us, right, how close Ruby is to Stella. Ruby's eyes go wide when Snickers jumps on Stella's back, then leaps onto her head. At the 4 o'clock show, Stella can only get as far as the entrance to the ring. Ruby refuses to leave her side. At the 7 o'clock show, Stella stays in her domain. When Mac comes for Ruby, Stella whispers something in her ear. Ruby looks at her pleadingly. Right? So when you're pleading, right, you're kind of begging, right? Can you think what a begging look would look like? But after a moment, she follows Mac to the ring. So Ruby went to the ring, right, without Stella. Ruby stands alone. The bright lights make her blink. She flaps her ears. She makes her tiny trumpet sound. The humans stop eating their popcorn. They coo. They clap. Ruby is a hit. I don't know whether to be happy or sad. So scholars think about that. Right? Why would you be happy that Ruby's a hit? And then why would you be sad that Ruby's a hit? All right, scholars, that leaves pages 108 to 113 for you to read on your own. But let's take a little look at the things in your packet as well.